"Uncle, I know how to make your daughter walk again." The estate of Jonathan Kensington sprawled across 5 acres of pristine landscaping, the modern mansion at its center gleaming white against the blue California sky. It was a monument to success, to wealth accumulated through decades of shrewd investments and relentless work ethic. But within those walls of privilege lived a pain that no amount of money could heal. "Emma, sweetheart, it's time for your therapy," Jonathan called out, his voice echoing through the marble-floor hallway. At 52, his once jet-black hair had surrendered to distinguished silver at the temples, though his posture remained military straight, a man accustomed to commanding rooms and closing deals. There was no answer from his 17-year-old daughter. Jonathan sighed, climbing the grand staircase to the east wing. Emma's bedroom door was closed as usual. He knocked softly. "Emma? I'm not doing it today," came the muffled reply. "What's the point?" The words struck Jonathan like physical blows, each one a reminder of his failure to protect her. 3 years had passed since the accident, the one that had shattered Emma's spine and taken his wife. 3 years of specialist surgeries and promises that led nowhere. "Dr. Levinson says consistency is key," Jonathan said, leaning his forehead against the door. "Please, Emma." After a long silence, the lock clicked. Emma appeared in the doorway, her wheelchair a sleek carbon fiber extension of herself. Her chestnut hair hung limply, and her eyes, so like her mother's, had lost their sparkle months ago. "Fine," she muttered, "but I'm not doing the electrical stimulation today. It hurts and doesn't do anything." Jonathan knew better than to argue. Small victories were all they had these days. On the other side of the city, Elijah Washington walked along the cracked sidewalk, his worn sneakers navigating the familiar path from the community center to the bus stop. At 15, he was already familiar with the heaviness of responsibility. His grandmother's medical bills kept mounting, and the part-time job he had at the community garden barely covered their food. "Hey, Eli," called Mr. Patterson from his barber shop. "You heading to see Miss Adelaide again?" Elijah nodded, patting the small cloth bag in his pocket. "Yes, sir. Got some new herbs for her tea." "That boy," Mr. Patterson said to his customer, "knows more about healing than some doctors I've met." Elijah smiled but kept walking. His knowledge wasn't something he bragged about. It was something passed down through generations, from his great-grandmother who had been a healer in rural Louisiana. While his peers buried themselves in video games and social media, Elijah studied the worn journal she had left behind, filled with remedies, techniques, and wisdom about the body's capacity to heal itself. His grandmother Adelaide had taught him that this knowledge came with responsibility. "Not everyone will understand," she often said, "but when you see someone you can help, you have a duty to try." The chance meeting happened on a Thursday afternoon. Jonathan had taken Emma to the botanical gardens, one of the few outings she still enjoyed. The wide paths were wheelchair accessible, and the vibrant colors of the flowers seemed to briefly lift the cloud that followed her everywhere. They were in the medicinal plant section when Jonathan realized he had left his wallet in the car. "I'll be right back, sweetheart," he assured Emma, who merely nodded, her attention captured by a display of rare orchids. As Jonathan hurried toward the parking lot, he collided with someone, a thin black teenager carrying a backpack covered in hand-drawn symbols. "Sorry, sir," the boy said, steadying himself. "My fault entirely," Jonathan replied absently, his mind already racing ahead to his next meeting. The boy's eyes widened with recognition. "You're Mr. Kensington, aren't you? I've seen you in the papers." Jonathan gave a tight smile, accustomed to being recognized. "Yes, that's me." Instead of asking for an autograph or a selfie, the boy's next word stopped Jonathan in his tracks. "That's your daughter back there, isn't it? The one in the wheelchair?" Jonathan's protective instincts flared. "What's it to you?" The boy didn't flinch under Jonathan's sudden coldness. Instead, he looked directly into the millionaire's eyes with a confidence that belied his ragged clothes. "Uncle," he said, using the respectful term common in his community, "I know how to make your daughter walk again." Jonathan's first instinct was to dismiss the boy as either delusional or, worse, a scammer trying to prey on a desperate father. He'd encountered plenty of both over the years: miracle workers, experimental treatments, spiritual healers, all promising what medicine couldn't deliver. Look, kid, Jonathan began, I appreciate your optimism, but my daughter has seen the best specialist in the country. With all due respect, sir, Elijah replied, his voice steady, there are ways of healing that don't come from hospitals or labs. Something in the boy's eyes, an old soul's wisdom in a young face, made Jonathan pause. He was about to respond when Emma's voice called out, Dad? Everything okay? Emma had wheeled herself over, curious about the extended conversation. Her eyes, guarded as always, assessed Elijah. Who's this? She asked. Before Jonathan could answer, Elijah extended his hand to her. I'm Elijah. I work at the community garden that provides herbs to the cafe here. Emma shook his hand cautiously. Emma, what were you guys talking about? An awkward silence hung in the air until Elijah spoke again, his voice gentler now. I was just telling your father that I might be able to help with your condition. Emma's face darkened instantly. Let me guess. You have some miracle cure that'll make me walk if my dad writes a big enough check? Emma, Jonathan warned, but Elijah didn't seem offended. No check needed. And I don't promise miracles, just possibilities. Emma studied him for a moment. What kind of possibilities? Jonathan stepped in. Emma, we should go. We're going to be late for your appointment. What appointment? Emma challenged. You just want to shut this down like you do with everything that's not approved by Dr. Stevens. The truth of her accusation stung. Jonathan had indeed become protected to the point of isolation, filtering everything and everyone in Emma's life. Elijah sensed a tension and reached into his backpack, pulling out a small card with a phone number. This is a community center where I volunteer. If you're interested, come by any Tuesday or Thursday afternoon. Ask for Elijah. Against his better judgment, Jonathan accepted the card. As they parted ways, he caught Elijah looking back at Emma with a gaze that held neither pity nor clinical assessment, just recognition, as if he saw beyond her wheelchair to the person trapped inside. 2 weeks passed before Jonathan found himself driving toward the address on the card. He hadn't planned to go ahead. In fact, thrown the car away the same day. But Emma had fished it out of the trash. I want to try, she had insisted, with more animation than he'd seen in months. What do we have to lose? The community center was in a part of town Jonathan rarely visited, a neighborhood where gentrification hadn't yet erased the character or the challenges. The building itself was worn but well-maintained, with a vibrant mural covering one wall. Inside, they found a hive of activity. Children in an after-school program, seniors playing chess, and toward the back, a small but thriving indoor garden space where Elijah was teaching younger kids about planting seeds. When he spotted them, surprise flickered across his face before he smiled and excused himself from the group. You came, he said simply. We're just here to talk, Jonathan clarified, still protective, still skeptical. Elijah nodded. Let's go to the garden outside. More privacy there. As they followed him through the building, Jonathan noticed how people greeted Elijah with respect, with affection. This was someone embedded in his community, not a drifter or a con artist. The garden behind the center was unexpectedly beautiful, raised beds filled with vegetables and herbs, flowers attracting butterflies and bees, and at the center, a small pond surrounded by stones. This is my real classroom, Elijah said, gesturing around them. Everything we need to heal is already here, provided by nature. Emma wheeled herself forward. What exactly are you proposing? And why would you think you can help when doctors can't? Elijah sat on one of the stones, bringing himself to Emma's eye level. Doctors treat the body like a machine with broken parts. Sometimes that works. But sometimes healing needs to address more than just the physical damage. So this is some kind of spiritual mumbo-jumbo? Jonathan asked, unable to keep the skepticism from his voice. It's about reconnection, Elijah explained patiently. The body, mind, and spirit working together again. Emma's spine was injured, but the pathways are still there, just dormant. I believe they can be reawakened. How? Emma pressed. A combination of things. Special exercises based on ancient movement traditions. Herbs that stimulate nerve regeneration. Meditation to rewire neural pathways. And water therapy in natural settings. Jonathan crossed his arms. And why should we believe you have this expertise? You're what, 16? 15, Elijah corrected. And I don't expect you to take my word for it. My grandmother, Adelaide Washington, worked as a physical therapist for 30 years before she retired. She combined her medical training with traditional healing practices passed down through our family. I've been her apprentice since I was 7. Is she here? Jonathan asked, looking around. A shadow passed over Elijah's face. She's at home. She has multiple sclerosis. That's how I started learning, helping with her treatments. Emma wheeled closer to him. Have you helped others with spinal injuries? 3 people. Elijah answered honestly. 2 regained partial mobility. 1 can walk with canes now. And what would you want in return? Jonathan asked, still suspicious. Elijah looked surprised by the question. Nothing. This is what I do. What I'm meant to do. Everyone wants something, Jonathan insisted. Elijah thought for a moment. Then I want access to your swimming pool. I heard your house is one. Water therapy works best in warm water, and the public pool here is always crowded and cold. The request was so practical, so reasonable, that Jonathan found himself momentarily speechless. Emma broke the silence. I want to try, Dad. Please. Looking at his daughter's face, seeing hope there for the first time in years, how could he say no? The regimen Elijah proposed was demanding. 3 sessions a week, each lasting 2 hours. Emma would need to follow a special diet, practice meditation daily, and commit fully to the process. It won't be easy, he warned them both, and progress will be slow. Dr. Stevens, Emma's neurologist, was predictably opposed when Jonathan mentioned the alternative therapy. Mr. Kensington, I understand your desperation, but following some unqualified teenagers' folk remedies could actually harm Emma. Her condition is delicate. Her condition is permanent, according to you, Jonathan countered. You've told us for 3 years that she'll never walk again. What's the harm in trying something else alongside your treatments? The doctor removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. There are experimental clinical trials we could consider. Stem cell therapies showing promise, which all have waiting lists years long, Jonathan finished. We've been through this. In the end, they reached a compromise. Emma would continue her regular medical checkups and physical therapy while also working with Elijah. Dr. Stevens insisted on monitoring for any negative effects. The first session began tentatively. Jonathan had cleared out the pool house, converting it into a therapy space with mats, cushions, and the special equipment Elijah had requested. He hovered nearby, watching as Elijah guided Emma through gentle movements designed to awaken dormant neural pathways. Focus on your toes, Elijah instructed as Emma lay on the mat. Imagine them warming up, tingling. The signal from your brain is trying to reach them. I can't feel anything, Emma said, frustration evident. You won't at first, Elijah assured her, but your brain is making new connections every time you try. After the land exercises came the water therapy. In the buoyancy of the heated pool, supported by Elijah's steady hands, Emma's legs moved in ways impossible on land. My grandmother calls water the great equalizer, Elijah explained as he guided her through the movements. It holds us up when we can't hold ourselves. By the end of the first month, there were no miraculous breakthroughs, but subtle changes emerged. Emma's chronic pain had decreased. Her sleep improved, and most remarkably, her mood transformed. She laughed again, engaged with life, even began helping Elijah teach younger children at the community center. Jonathan watched this transformation with cautious optimism and growing respect for the young healer who had entered their lives. One evening, as Elijah was preparing to leave after a session, Jonathan finally asked a question that had been nagging at him. Why did you approach us that day? Out of all the people you could help, why Emma? Elijah was quiet for a moment, packing his herbs into their cloth pouches. I recognized something in her. The same look my grandmother had when her MS first confined her to a wheelchair, like her spirit was caged. And you thought you could free it? I thought I could show her that the cage has a door. Elijah hesitated. There's something else you should know. The accident that injured Emma and took your wife. Jonathan stiffened. What about it? My cousin was driving the other car. The one that hit you. The revelation hit Jonathan like a physical blow. Your cousin was the drunk driver who killed my wife. Elijah nodded slowly. Marcus Washington. He died in prison last year, beaten by other inmates. Jonathan's mind reeled. Is that what this is about? Guilt? Redemption? Partly, Elijah admitted, but not the way you think. Marcus made terrible choices that hurt your family. Our family has carried that shame. When I saw Emma that day, I felt responsibility not out of guilt, but out of connection. Our families are linked by tragedy. Maybe they can also be linked by healing. Jonathan stood abruptly. I think you should go now. As Elijah gathered his things and left quietly, Jonathan remained in the pool house, overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Part of him wanted to end the arrangement immediately, to cut ties with any reminder of the accident. But another part recognized that doing so would punish Emma, who was finally showing signs of progress, both physical and emotional. The next day, Emma was waiting in the pool house at the usual time, but Elijah didn't appear. Did you call him? She asked her father. No, Jonathan replied, avoiding her eyes. Emma studied her father's face. What happened between you two? And don't say nothing, because I know that look. Jonathan had never lied to his daughter, and he wouldn't start now. He told her everything Elijah had revealed. When he finished, Emma was quiet for a long time. So you sent him away? I needed time to think. Without consulting me? This is my body, my life. Don't I get a say? Emma, the connection to the accident, is exactly what makes this meaningful, she interrupted. Dad, for 3 years I've been angry at a ghost, a man who died without ever facing us. And now his family is trying to help heal what he broke. Don't you see how important that is? Jonathan looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw not the broken child he'd been protecting, but a young woman with wisdom beyond her years. When did you get so insightful? When I stopped feeling sorry for myself. Emma answered simply. Elijah helped me do that. That evening, Jonathan drove to the address Elijah had provided on his contact information. It was a small house in a modest neighborhood, with a ramp leading to the front door. When he knocked, an elderly woman answered, sitting in a wheelchair not unlike Emma's. Mrs. Washington? Jonathan asked. I'm Jonathan Kensington. Elijah has been helping my daughter. The woman's eyes widened in recognition. The millionaire with the daughter. Elijah talks about her progress all the time. She opened the door wider. Please, come in. Elijah's not home, yet he's making deliveries to our homebound neighbors, but he should be back soon. Adelaide Washington's home was small but immaculately kept, with plants everywhere and walls covered in family photos. As she prepared tea for them, moving skillfully in her wheelchair, Jonathan noticed her hands gnarled by disease but still strong, still capable. My grandson told me about your conversation yesterday, she said, handing him a steaming cup. He was afraid he'd made a mistake in telling you. I reacted poorly, Jonathan admitted. Adelaide nodded. Understandable. That accident took so much from you. It did, and I've been stuck there. In that moment. Trauma does that, Adelaide said gently. Freezes us in time. But children, they keep growing, keep changing, whether we're ready or not. She gestured to a photo on the wall, a younger Elijah with a man who resembled him. That's my son, Elijah's father. Lost him to violence when Elijah was just 7. I thought the grief would kill me. Instead, it gave me this boy to raise, to pass on what I know. Your healing traditions, Jonathan said. Knowledge is never owned, Mr. Kensington. It's only borrowed, then passed along. Elijah has a gift, the kind that doesn't come from textbooks. I've seen that, Jonathan acknowledged. The connection he forms with Emma, it's helping her in ways I couldn't. The front door opened then, and Elijah entered, stopping short when he saw Jonathan. Mr. Kensington. I came to apologize, Jonathan said, standing, and to ask if you'd be willing to continue working with Emma. Elijah looked at his grandmother, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I never planned to stop, he said. I just thought you might need space. What I need, Jonathan said, is to start moving forward again, like Emma is. The breakthrough came in the 3rd month. Emma was in the pool, doing the neural pathway exercises that had become routine. Elijah supported her from behind, while Jonathan watched from his usual chair at the pool's edge. "Today we're going to try something different," Elijah announced. "I'm going to move away slowly, and I want you to try to maintain the floating position." "I'll sink," Emma protested. "Maybe, but your body remembers more than you think." Slowly, Elijah removed the supporting hands. For a moment, Emma's legs began to sink. Then, with visible concentration, her right leg twitched, then her left. Not strong movements, but intentional ones. "Dad," she gasped. "Dad, I can feel them. I can feel my legs." Jonathan was on his feet instantly, but Elijah motioned for him to stay back. "Let her find connection on her own," he said quietly. For nearly a minute, Emma remained floating, her legs making small, uncoordinated movements. Then she tired, and Elijah moved back in to support her. The moment was electric. For the first time, there was tangible proof that something was changing. Dr. Stevens remained skeptical when they reported the development at Emma's next checkup. "Muscle spasms are common in partial spinal injuries," he said. "It doesn't necessarily indicate functional recovery." "It wasn't a spasm," Emma insisted. "I could feel it. I made it happen." The doctor ordered new tests, new scans. The results, when they came back, showed something the previous scans hadn't captured. Small but significant neurodegeneration along the damaged pathway. "This is unusual," Dr. Stevens admitted. "Studying the images, there are signs of new neural connections forming around the injury site." "Is it the herbs?" Jonathan asked. "Or the meditation?" Emma suggested. The doctor shook his head. "Science doesn't have all the answers yet about neuroplasticity and recovery. Whatever you're doing, I can't explain it, but I can't argue with these results either." Progress after that was steady, but painstakingly slow. Some days brought new sensations or movements. Others brought frustration and tears. Through it all, Elijah remained a constant presence, his calm confidence never wavering. "Healing isn't linear," he reminded Emma during a particularly difficult session when movements that had come easily the day before now eluded her. "The path forward includes steps backward." By the 6-month mark, Emma could move both legs intentionally in the water, on land, supported between parallel bars. She could bear weight for short periods. It wasn't walking, not yet, but it was more than any doctor had thought possible. The relationship between the three of them evolved as well. Jonathan opened his home to Adelaide for weekly dinners, listening to her stories of the healing traditions in her family. Emma and Elijah developed a bond that transcended patient and healer. They became friends, confidants. She helped him with his schoolwork. He introduced her to his community garden project. One evening, as they all shared a meal on the patio overlooking the pool where so much transformation had occurred, Adelaide raised her glass in a toast. "To new connections," she said, looking meaningfully at each of them. "The ones in Emma's spine and the ones around this table." The true test came unexpectedly, nearly 9 months into their journey. Emma had been working with a specialized walker, managing a few steps at a time with Elijah's support. The progress was encouraging, but still fragile. That morning, as Elijah helped Emma into the pool for their regular session, he noticed something different about her. "You seem tense today," he observed. Emma didn't meet his eyes. "It's nothing, just didn't sleep well." But as they worked through the exercises, her movements were distracted, her focus elsewhere. Finally, Elijah stopped. "Something's blocking you today. We need to address it before we can make progress." Emma's composed facade crumbled. "The anniversary of the accident is tomorrow," she said, her voice breaking. 3 years since Mom died, since I lost my legs. Dad's planning the usual. Visit to the cemetery, then lock ourselves away and pretend we're coping. Elijah was quiet for a moment. "How would you want to mark it instead?" Emma looked surprised by the question. No one had asked her that before. "I don't know. Something that feels alive. Mom loved life so much. Sitting at her grave seems wrong." That evening, Elijah approached Jonathan with Emma's concerns. To his credit, Jonathan listened. "What did you have in mind?" he asked when Elijah finished. A ceremony at the community garden, to honor your wife's memory and to acknowledge how far Emma has come. Jonathan hesitated. I'm not sure I'm ready for something so public. It wouldn't be public, Elijah assured him. Just us, my grandmother, and maybe one or two others who've been part of Emma's journey. A chance to release some of the pain you've both been carrying. The next evening, as the sun began its descent, a small group gathered in the community garden. Emma had insisted on wearing a dress her mother had loved, brightest blue against the green of the garden. Jonathan stood beside her wheelchair, his hand on her shoulder. Adelaide led them in a simple ceremony, burning herbs that filled the air with a cleansing scent. She asked each person to share a memory of joy rather than sorrow. When it was Emma's turn, she surprised everyone by asking to stand. I need help, she said, looking at both her father and Elijah. Together, they supported her as she rose from the wheelchair, standing between them on unsteady legs. Mom used to say that love keeps us standing when we think we'll fall, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. I feel that now literally. For several precious moments, she stood there, supported by the two men who represented her past and her future. Then, with determination in her eyes, she shifted her weight and took one small, deliberate step forward, then another. 3 steps, a symbolic journey away from grief and toward possibility. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. Later, as Jonathan helped Emma back into the car, Elijah approached them. Today was a real breakthrough, he said quietly. The steps? Jonathan asked. Elijah shook his head. The healing of your hearts. The body follows where the spirit leads. A year after that first chance encounter at the Botanical Gardens, Emma walked across the stage at her high school graduation. Not alone, she still needed a cane, and sometimes Elijah's steadying hand, but on her own 2 feet. The journey hadn't been simple or straightforward. There had been medical complications, setbacks, moments of doubt. Emma would never have the carefree gait of her peers, but she had mobility that no specialist had thought possible. More importantly, she had purpose. Working alongside Elijah, she had discovered her own passion for healing, for the intersection of modern medicine and traditional practices. She planned to study neurophysiology in college, with a focus on rehabilitation techniques. Jonathan had transformed as well. The man who once measured value in dollars now found richness in the community he had discovered through Adelaide and Elijah. He had established a foundation to make integrative healing practices accessible to those who couldn't afford specialized care. As for Elijah, his work with Emma had drawn attention from medical researchers interested in documenting his methods. At 17, he was co-authoring a paper with Dr. Stevens, the same neurologist who had once dismissed him. On warm evenings, the unlikely family they had formed often gathered in the garden behind the community, centered the millionaire, his daughter, the healer boy, and his grandmother, different in so many ways, yet connected by something deeper than circumstance. Uncle, Emma said one such evening, using Elijah's term of respect as she now often did with Jonathan. Remember when Elijah first told you he could make me walk again? Jonathan nodded, smiling at the memory of his skepticism. He was right, Emma continued, but not in the way any of us expected. He helped me walk again not just with my legs, but with my heart, with purpose. Adelaide nodded approvingly. That's the truest healing of all. As the sun set over their garden sanctuary, Jonathan looked at the faces around him, at the family tragedy had unexpectedly given him. No amount of money could have bought this kind of wealth,